नमो नमः। षष्ठ्यद्य पूर्त्यर्थं मुम्बै विद्यापीठस्य संस्कृत विभागाय हार्दाः शुभाशयाः। I am Dr. Bhagyashree Bavare, Associate Professor at the KJ Somaiya Institute of Thermal Studies under Somaiya Vidyavihar University. I am a past student of the Department of Sanskrit, University of Mumbai. I completed my master's and PhD degree from the department. We still cherish the memories of the department that we gathered during this period. All the knowledge and guidance that we received from our teachers, the affection, support, and encouragement that we received from the whole staff of the Department of Sanskrit is something we still cherish, and we are really grateful to the department for that. It is really a pleasant moment to present this talk at the Diamond Jubilee celebration of the Department of Sanskrit. Today, I will be talking about the concept of time and the descriptions related to the nakshatras from the Vedic period. As we are aware, yajna performance was always at the focus of the Vedic literature. Therefore, the measurement of time, the parameters that are mainly associated with the Kala, the descriptions which are there related to nakshatras, all these are also focusing around the concept of yajna performance. We observe that from the ancient time, the division of time or Kala Chakra was always imagined. This Kala Chakra was Dwadasharam, which had 12 spokes. These 12 spokes are naturally the 12 months within 1 year. So year was always divided into the 12 months. And as you can observe here from the Rucha, from the Rigveda, first mandala, there is also a mention to Sapta Shatani Vimshatihi. Now this is 720, a reference to the Ahoratra. 360 are the days in a year, and 360 days, 360 nights make the number 720. So 360 days in a year and the year divided into 12 months is the calculation we have been using from ancient period. These months were naturally mainly based on the seasons that we observe. So the calendar was solar, but along with that, lunar calendar was also in vogue. For all the ritual purposes, Purnima and Amavasya and Tithis are also very important factor. So lunar as well as solar calendars were in practice. The solar months, names that we observe in the various Vedic texts are mainly associated with the seasons. As we can see over here, Taittiriya Samhita and many other texts as well, they refer to the solar months with the names Madhuscha Madhavascha, Shukraha cha Shuchihi cha, Nabhaha cha Nabhasyaha cha, Ishaha cha Urjaha cha, and further. And all these pairs of the months are associated with a particular season, a particular Rutu, which is supposed to have been fallen into the period of these two solar months. Therefore, Madhu and Madhava are the Rutus with which Vasanta or spring is associated. And this is usually considered to be the beginning of the year. So in Vedic times, the year used to begin with Vasanta Rutu and the months Madhu and Madhava. There is also a reference to the intercalary month because the calendars which were in practice were lunar as well as solar. It was a requirement that we adjust these two calendars together, and the difference of days that we observe within these two calendars, because solar calendar mainly includes 360 days, whereas the lunar calendar has a little less than 360. usually 354. And to adjust this difference, we need to add intercalary month. We find in the Rigveda first mandala, 25th Sukta dedicated to Varuna, there is a reference, Veda Maso Dhruta Vrato Dvadasha Prajavatah Veda Ya Upajayate. Varuna is the one who holds or who maintains the cycle of 12 months. And he is also aware of that month, which is born later, which is a reference to the intercalary month, the 13th month or Adhika Masa. We also come across the terms like Samsarpa, Malimlucha, and Auhaspati. All these terms are referring to the intercalated month or the Adhika Masa, but there are some later texts which explain to us why there are these different terms used to refer to the Adhika Masa. If there is a Kshaya Masa that falls in a particular year, Kshaya Masa refers to two Sankrantis of a sun in the same month. If the sun moves from two different zodiac signs, there are two Sankrantis of sun in the same month, then that month is considered as the Kshaya Masa. And therefore, we have to observe intercalary month before the Kshaya Masa as well as after the Kshaya Masa. And then the names given to them are Samsarpa and Auhaspati. This description we find into the Muhurta Chintamani text. Malimlucha is also another term which is used to refer to the intercalated month or the Adhika Masa. And this is usually introduced every 5th year to approximate the lunar and the solar modes of computation. Now, within Adhika Masa, we do not observe any Sankranti of the sun. So the sun is not moving or crossing through any of the zodiac sign during the Adhika Masa period. And that is how this calendar is adjusted. Now, there was a reference in the earlier slide about the 5-year cycle of Yuga. In the Vedic period, we observe that two different types of Yuga calculations are mentioned. One is the Chaturyuga system, which we are all aware of, Kruta, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga. This system also finds mention into the Vedic texts. But apart from that, there is also a frequent reference to the 5-year Yuga system. As you can observe, Vajasneyi Samhita as well as Taittiriya Brahman also has a description of these 5 years. Samvatsara, Parivatsara, Idavatsara, Idvatsara or Vatsara, and Anuvatsara. These are usually the names related to these 5 years. And this 5-year cycle is also termed as Yuga. And therefore, the intercalated month is included into this cycle after every 5th year. Now, Samvatsara here is associated with the solar year. As we discussed earlier, there are 12 months associated with the seasons, and that 1 year is called as Samvatsara. There is Parivatsara, which is associated with the observation of Jupiter, because that is the biggest planet that we can observe. This Jupiter takes almost 12 years to complete its circuit through all the 12 signs, zodiac signs. And this motion of Jupiter is considered to be Parivatsara. Idavatsara is mainly the Savana year. Savana is naturally associated with the 3 Soma libations, 3 Soma Savanas that we used to perform. And here, the duration of the days in a month is considered to be 30. And therefore, the whole year, which is made up of 360 days, is Ida Vatsara. Id Vatsara or Vatsara, as its name may appear, this is a lunar year where each month is ending with the Amavasya. So it is Amanta Chandramasa. And the whole year based on that is called as Vatsara. Anuvatsara is the year which is related to the nakshatras. Each month here will have 27 days because that is the time taken by moon to pass through each nakshatra. So within 27 days, all moon will be crossing through all the 27 nakshatras. And based on that, if we are calculating the year, then that is named as Anuvatsara. This system was also termed as one yuga, and Vedanga Jyotish has its all calculations and measurements mainly associated with this 5-year cycle of the yugas. This was probably so because it was easier and helpful for the ritual performances. Now moving to the descriptions of the nakshatras. We observe various names associated with nakshatras as well. There is one interesting term used here, as we can observe from Vajrasnehi Samhita and Taittiriya Samhita. There is a term Bhekura or Bekura, which is also related to nakshatras. Here, Chandrama is considered to be the Gandharva, and nakshatras are considered to be the Apsaras, and they are the wives of this Gandharva, Chandrama, and they are termed as Bhekura or Bekura, maybe because they were luminous. Taittiriya Brahman offers very interesting description why nakshatras were also termed as tarakas. Salilam va idam antarasit yad ataran tat tarakanam tarakatvam. Tarakas are called tarakas from the dhatu through tarati because Taittiriya Brahman informs there was at the beginning, at the time of creation, only water or fluid floating between the earth and the heaven. And the tarakas were the one led by Kritika. These were the stars who crossed over this whole water and attained the higher abode, and therefore they are called as Taraka. Nakshatras are also considered to be the abodes of the gods. They are Devagruhaha. The term nakshatra itself is derived from the dhatu naksha, which mainly refers to its movement or motion. Because nakshatras we always observe in the sky moving ahead, they are called as nakshatra. Shatapatha Brahman informs us, Yad ashru sanksharitam asit tani nakshatrani abhavan. In the beginning, at the time of creation, Prajapati first created the sun and the moon. Then ashru, or the fluid that was flowing from his eyes, from that were created the nakshatras, and therefore they got the name nakshatra. Nirukta informs Rukshaha is another term that can be used to refer to the stars or nakshatras. And the explanation is from the dhatu stru, udirnani ivakhyayante. They, we observe them raised high into the sky, and they are luminous. Therefore, they are called as Rukshaha. So there are various names or terms used to refer to the stars or the nakshatras. We observe the lists related to nakshatras throughout the Samhitas and the Brahmana text, and different divinities which are associated with each nakshatra. The lists usually start with Kritika Nakshatra. Kritika was the first nakshatra, which was very important also for the ritual performance. And with every nakshatra, there is a divinity associated. As you can observe here Kritika Nakshatra has Agni as its Devata. Rohini Nakshatra has Prajapati as the Devata. Mrugashirsha Nakshatra has Soma Devata, so on and so forth. Sometimes in the Vedic text, we come across the list of 27 nakshatras and sometimes 28 nakshatras. Taittiriya Samhita refers to only 27 nakshatras, but in Taittiriya Brahman, we come across the 28 nakshatras. If there are 28 nakshatras, then Abhijit is included within Uttarashadha and Shravana nakshatra. Thus, the list includes 28 nakshatras. If we go back to the Rigveda, Rigveda has mentioned only of the three nakshatras, Tishya, Agha, and Arjuni, which we can correlate with Pushya, Magha, and Falguni. Later on, there are also different types of classifications or categorization of these nakshatras. Nakshatras are sometimes classified into Deva nakshatras and Yama nakshatras, which are naturally associated with the movement of the nakshatra. When it is mainly in the northern hemisphere, which is the abode of the devas, then those are the Deva nakshatras. And when the motion is more towards southern hemisphere, south, which is the abode of the Yama, so they will be termed as Yama nakshatras. They are also then divided as the brighter and darker hemispheres, and therefore the nakshatras within those hemispheres will also get some reflections or qualities of these brighter and darker shades. Vedanga Jyotish also classifies nakshatras into Ugra and Krura or Mrudu, Saumya. Naturally, the nakshatras which are classified as Ugra or Krura are to be avoided for certain auspicious performances. Now let us look at some of the interesting stories associated with some nakshatras from the Vedic period. As I mentioned earlier, Kritika is the first nakshatra in the list. In the Vedic period, we always find Kritika to be the first nakshatra because our calendar, the lunar as well as solar, this system was mainly starting with the vernal equinox point. The Vasanta Rutu, as we discussed earlier, was the first one, or the Madhu Madhava are the months with which the solar year used to begin. All these points coincide with the vernal equinox point, which is the point where celestial equator and the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun, these two equator and ecliptic meet at two different points, and they are called as vernal equinox and autumnal equinox. Vernal equinox is the point with which we begin our calendar system. And Kritika was the nakshatra at which, in the Vedic period, vernal equinox was observed. Later on, when we come to the period of Varahamihir, we start observing list of the nakshatras beginning with Ashwini nakshatra, because now the vernal equinox point was further shifted and it was observed near Ashwini. So Kritika becomes the important nakshatra as well as the first and the foremost nakshatra in the list. It is also named as Bahula because even with our open eyes, we can observe Kritikas as an open cluster. We usually observe 6 or 7 stars of this nakshatra. And we also find the names Amba, Dula, Nitatni, Abhrayanti, Meghayanti, Varshayanti, and Chukunuka mentioned in the Vedic literature. These are the names of the stars within Kritika Nakshatra as we find it in the Vedic text. Meghayanti, Varshayanti, Abhrayanti, these are clearly the names associated also with Varsharutu. There are many interesting stories related to Kritika Nakshatra. In Shatapatha Brahman, we come across two contradictory statements. One is Kritikasu Agni Adadhita, Eta Havai Prachay Disho Nachavante. We should perform Agnyadhana on the first nakshatra Kritika because they never shift from the Prachi or east direction. This is the nakshatra which certainly rises at east, and that is the first nakshatra you can observe. And so the one who performs Agnyadhana at Kritika nakshatra also gains firmness, also gains, becomes steady. That is the belief. There is also another very interesting belief associated with Kritikas. Na Kritikasu adadhita rakshanam hava eta agre patniha asu. This is a mention to the Saptarshis, and Kritikas are considered to be the wives of these Saptarshis. The seventh one, Anasuya, is not included over here. The six, mainly the six wives of the six rishis, for some reason, they were separated from their husbands. And therefore, what we observe is Saptarshis always rise at north and Kritika always rises at the east. So they are separated from each other. And therefore, Shatapatha Brahman also informs us that we should not be performing certain fire rituals on Kritika because the similar type of fate could, the Yajamana may meet this similar type of fate, and therefore it should be avoided, which is a slight contradiction to the earlier belief. Now, here, the reasons why Kritikas were separated from their husbands is not clearly explained. But we are aware when we go to the Puranic literature, Puranas do mention about various stories to explain this thought. The well-known story related to Kritikas is of the birth of Kartikeya. The Purana text usually described the semen of Shiva was carried by Agni, but Agni was not able to bear it. So he discards the semen into the river. And the six wives of the six rishis were at the bank of this particular river, and the semen enters within them, and they discard the baby out of their body, and because of which Kartikeya is born, who has six faces. This is an elaborate description of a story in the Puranic text, maybe based on the reference that we have already seen into the Shatapatha Brahman. Therefore, we see Agni being the main deity associated with Kritikas. So, starting from the Vedic period, there was an association of Kritika and Agni, which could be because of the belief that Kritikas are the main and the first and foremost nakshatra, therefore suitable for the Agnyadhana Vidhi because they rise always at the east. And this same link, this same connection was later developed into the story of the Puranas for the birth of Kartikeya. Then let us look at the story related to Rohini Nakshatra. Rohini is usually considered to be the star Alpha Aldebaran, and the meaning of Rohini itself is red colored. The deity of Rohini is Prajapati. Traditionally, this nakshatra is considered to be a single nakshatra with single star. The story is very interesting. As we discussed earlier, Gandharva was the Chandrama, and all the nakshatras were the Apsaras, and they were the wives of Chandrama. Daksha Prajapati had 60 daughters, and from them 27 were the nakshatras who were married to Moon. So Moon has nakshatras as his wives. But we often observe in the Vedic text that Rohini is described to be the most beloved wife of Moon, and therefore we also come across a curse given to the Moon by Prajapati. Sometimes this curse is also associated with the waxing and waning of the Moon that we observe. If we look at more facts, why this type of description could have been there, it is a possibility that Rohini has angular distance of 5.5 degrees south from the ecliptic, and Moon's path also makes about a 5-degree angle with the ecliptic. So Rohini Nakshatra and Moon can come very close in the sky, and we can observe occultation of Rohini and Moon quite frequently. After every 18.6 years, this occultation can be observed easily, and they can come very close to each other, and we can observe that in the sky. And this could be a reason why we find stories describing that Rohini is the most beloved wife of the Moon. And because of this, Moon is also cursed by the father of the nakshatras, who is Prajapati. Therefore, deity Prajapati is always associated with Rohini. Let us look at the next nakshatra, and the story, again interesting and also related to the story of Rohini. Here we are looking at the nakshatra Shravana, which is also referred to by the names Shrona and Ashwatha. Traditionally, again, Shravana is considered to be one star or a singular nakshatra, but actually it includes alpha, beta, and 3 different stars from the Aquilae constellation. The meaning of Shravana is ear. Shape could be in the form of ear or a trident. The deity is Vishnu. The story associated with Shravana that we find in the Puranas, not much in the Vedic text, but Brahmavaivarta Purana has an interesting story. It says that Shravana was, again, who is one of the wife of the Moon, was very angry with Moon. And the reason we already discussed, because Rohini was the most favorite wife of Moon. So naturally, Shravana was very angry. So one day when she was furious, she just casts her shadow. She leaves her shadow behind, and she goes to the father's home, and she complains about the husband to the father, because of which Prajapati is cursing the Moon. Now this shadow which Shravana left behind takes the form of Abhijit Nakshatra. And therefore, as we had seen earlier, if there is a list of 28 nakshatras, then we have Abhijit mentioned between Uttarashadha and Shravana Nakshatra, because Abhijit is considered as the shadow of Shravana. Let us move to the next nakshatra and another interesting story related to it. This is the nakshatra Mrugashirsha, which is also called as Invaka or Saumya in Vedic period. This is the constellation Orion. The deity associated is Soma. Sometimes Mrugashirsha is considered to be singular nakshatra or even plural, because there are different names by which it is referred, like Mrugashirsha, Invaka, and Saumya. Some names are in neuter gender and some in feminine. The story is described in detail into Aitareya Brahman. We observe that the yajna performance is going on, and there Prajapati desires for his own daughter. The daughter takes the form of a doe and goes to the sky. Prajapati takes the form of the deer and goes behind her. All deities, they start exclaiming, Akritam vai Prajapatihi karoti. This is something improper that Prajapati is doing, and therefore Rudra gets ready with his bow and arrow, and he shoots an arrow at Prajapati. Now Prajapati, who was in the form of the deer, the arrow is shot at him, and Mruga, the constellation, gets formed because of this whole scenario. Now, as you can observe into the image, we can clearly see the three stars, which are like the belt of Orion. So in Greek mythology, this constellation is Orion, and the three stars in the middle are called as the belt of Orion, which is in the Vedic text Ishu Trikanda, the three stars making the arrow of Rudra. Rudra himself is called as Mruga Vyadha because he shot an arrow at the Mruga, who was the Prajapati, and this is the Canis Major star, which is called as Mruga Vyadha star, the hunter star. This also includes Ardra, which is the star Sirius within this Orion or Mrugashirsha Nakshatra, and Rohini was considered as the daughter who took the form of the doe and went to the sky. That daughter is considered to be Rohini. So star Aldebaran, star Sirius, the belt of Orion, and the four legs of the deer, this whole image makes constellation Orion or Mrugashirsha as we observe it in the sky. So we observe that not only Mrugashirsha itself, but Rohini and Ardra, who are very close to this constellation, all are brought together into this interesting story. And the story is actually associated with a ritual performance, and the whole context is more like a charter myth or the story which is associated with the ritual. There is also an interesting story in the Vedic text about the constellation Chitra. Chitra is also well known as the constellation Spica, and the meaning of Chitra is bright. The deity of this nakshatra is sometimes described as Twashta or Indra. Taittiriya Brahman informs us about an interesting story. It says, like the Devas, Asuras were also desirous of obtaining the higher abodes. And so they started performing a particular fire sacrifice with Rauhina Agni. Now, naturally, the deities led by Indra were worried about this performance. And so Indra took a form of Brahmin. He appeared at this sacrificial place and he offered his own ishtaka or a brick to the asuras, and that ishtaka or brick was put uh, below the chiti. So when the asuras were creating the chiti, this ishtaka offered by Indra was put below. But later on, Indra in the form of Brahman appeared again, and he asked for that ishtaka or brick back. He wanted it back from the asuras, so he just took away the brick, and therefore the asuras were not able to complete the chiti and the performance. And therefore, tadvai chitrayai chitratvam. That is the unique or wonderful thing that we observe about Chitra Nakshatra. And whoever performs a fire sacrifice at Chitra Nakshatra gains victory or superiority like Indra. That is how Vedic text describes us about the Chitra. What we observe here are the different stories which are at one hand associated with some or the other ritual performance, and on the other hand, they are also based on the sky observation. The image or the shape of a particular constellation that we can easily observe in the sky, that shape is very beautifully woven into a story, which is also associated with some or the other yajna performance in the Vedic text. As I mentioned earlier, names of the nakshatras, we observe they are sometimes in masculine gender, sometimes in feminine gender, and sometimes in neuter gender. Now, Skanda Puran has a very interesting story, which could be a possible explanation to understand why we observe these different genders associated with different names of the nakshatras. Skanda Puran says, "Na kshantam hi tapotyugram etad anyabhiridrusham pura abalabhis tasmad gonama nakshatramatra." Why do we call nakshatras as nakshatras? The story says there were 60 daughters of Daksha led by Rohini. They all performed great penance for 1,000 years at the bank of Varna river. They established Nakshatreshwara Linga at the bank of this river, and they performed Purushayita Vrata. Lord Shiva was pleased and he granted them a boon. The boon was the nakshatras can convert themselves into male gender if they wished so. So nakshatras who were originally the daughters of Daksha Prajapati, if they wished so, for a time being, they can also change their gender as a male gender. And this could be a possible explanation which Skanda Puran tried to explain why some names of the nakshatras are sometimes in neuter gender, sometimes masculine, and sometimes feminine. There are many other interesting stories. If we go into the Purana text, there are many more stories that are developed and elaborately described based on some of the Vedic references. But for today, let us stop here. Thank you very much for a patient listening. And once again, hearty congratulations to the Department of Sanskrit on the Diamond Jubilee celebration. Thank you.